My best man stood up at my wedding and announced, "I can't let you marry her after what I found in her basement." The ballroom went silent. 300 guests stopped mid-conversation, all eyes locked on Trevor, standing at the head table with his face red and his hands shaking. My bride Natalie turned to look at me from where she stood near the cake. Trevor's voice came out louder the second time. "I need everyone to stay calm, but there are things in Natalie's basement that the police need to see immediately. I'm not making accusations. I'm just saying what I found when I went to get the emergency seating charts she said were stored down there." My mother grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug through my tuxedo sleeve, and Natalie's father stood up looking like he was about to charge across the room and physically remove Trevor. I stood frozen, trying to process words that made no sense strung together. Trevor was my best friend since college, the guy who'd helped me pick out the engagement ring 6 months ago, who'd thrown my bachelor party 2 weeks back, who'd spent yesterday afternoon helping me tie my bow tie because my hands were shaking too badly. The idea that he would stand up during my wedding reception and say something designed to destroy everything felt like reality fracturing. Natalie finally found her voice, and it came out high and strained in a way I'd never heard before. "What are you talking about? What basement? We don't even have a basement." Her face had gone pale beneath her makeup, and I noticed her hands trembling as she gripped the cake knife she'd been holding when Trevor started speaking. The wedding coordinator rushed over trying to salvage the situation, suggesting we all move this discussion somewhere private, but Trevor shook his head and pulled out his phone. "I took photos," he said. "I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, so I documented everything. The police are already on their way because I called them from the parking lot 20 minutes ago." The room erupted in competing conversations as guests tried to make sense of what was happening. Natalie's mother started crying loudly, while her father shouted at Trevor to shut his mouth or face a lawsuit for slander. My own father appeared at my side, asking what the hell was going on. I genuinely had no idea what he was talking about. Natalie and I had been together for 2 years, engaged for 6 months, and I'd been to her townhouse hundreds of times without ever seeing or hearing about any basement. The place was built in the 70s as part of a development that famously had no basements due to water table issues. Trevor started swiping through his phone while people shouted questions at him. He held up the screen showing a photo of what looked like a wooden door with a heavy padlock, then swiped to show concrete stairs leading down into darkness, then another image of something I couldn't quite make out. Natalie lunged toward Trevor with a scream that didn't sound human, the cake knife still gripped in her hand. 3 people grabbed her before she could reach him, including one of her bridesmaids and my cousin Danny. The knife clattered to the floor, and Natalie collapsed into the arms of the people holding her, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. That reaction sent ice through my veins because it looked like guilt or terror or some combination that made Trevor's impossible claims suddenly feel less impossible. My mother demanded to see Trevor's phone, and when he handed it over, her face went gray as she scrolled through the images. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before and said, "We needed to get out of this room immediately." The wedding coordinator was on her own phone, presumably calling security, and I could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. Natalie's father pushed through the crowd toward Trevor, but my father intercepted him, and the 2 men stood chest to chest having a heated argument I couldn't hear. I finally moved, crossing the ballroom to where Natalie was being held by her bridesmaids and my cousin. Her mascara had run in black streaks down her face, and she wouldn't meet my eyes, just kept shaking her head and saying no over and over. I asked her directly what Trevor was talking about, what was in her basement, why she'd lied about the townhouse not having one. She looked up at me then, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach drop, a kind of desperate calculation, like she was trying to figure out which story would work best. Before she could answer, the ballroom doors burst open, and 4 police officers entered with hands on their weapons, scanning the room for threats. Trevor immediately identified himself as the person who'd called them, and started explaining while my wedding descended into complete pandemonium. Guests were filming on their phones, some trying to leave but being stopped by officers who wanted statements. One of the officers asked Natalie to come speak with them privately, and when she refused to move, they informed her it wasn't really a request. 2 female officers escorted her out of the ballroom while she screamed my name and begged me not to believe whatever lies Trevor was telling. I started to follow, but an officer stopped me, saying they needed to speak with her alone first. Trevor handed over his phone to show the photos, and I watched the officers' expressions change as they scrolled through whatever evidence he'd captured. One of them immediately made a radio call requesting additional units and something about a warrant. My mother grabbed my hand and squeezed it so hard both our hands went white. She leaned close and whispered that no matter what happened next, she loved me and we'd figure this out together, and that's when things took a turn I never expected. Full story is linked below or on my channel.